right, welcome everyone. We're starting right on time here, 9 a.m. Mountain Time. I see there's 35 joined. I think there's more coming. Thank you everyone for being here wherever you are in the world. Welcome to, this is the second or the third, depending on when you want to start counting our AI focused workshops. But I'm really excited to keep this going, and hopefully we'll do some more. So Greg, go ahead, get us started. Let's jump right in.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's nice to be together again for a second session. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. Let me see. Okay, sure. Can you guys see my screen? Is it working? Can you hear me, Mark?
Yes, you're good.
Okay, I'm good. The screen is up, right? Okay.
Yep, screen is up.
All right, perfect. Okay, just move a little like the Zoom screen here so that I can keep in touch with everyone. Okay, good. All right. So for the second session, we're still in the, translation workflow. We're still very much at the beginning. We're at the stage of project documentation and pre-translation analysis. This is what we're going to try to do today, right? These two things here. So yeah, we will basically, we'll carry on looking at how you can document the translation project you're working on or the research project you undertook. So, in the sense of building a documentation, identifying primary literature, secondary literature scholarship on the topic, and then using various tools you may need when it comes to pre-processing the text you have, and particularly in case when you have several versions of a text, several witnesses. And we'll see that we can use the tools for preparing critical edition too. There'll be a lot of new developments there, I think, coming up in the future actually on that side, particularly as we integrate the OCR, new tools that are being developed by BDRC, for example, for Tibetan. So that's going to be what we're going to do today, and I have another presentation for this particular session. As always, we're going to alternate between a short little, maybe more general, abstract, theoretical, introduction, overview to prompting today. So, and then case studies, where we'll see how it goes when we work with practical applications. And so here today, we're going to start talking a little bit how you prompt the LLMs, how you work with this AI in a way that's efficient, meaning, how you get where you want. And so here, before, starting this, I want to stress something that I think is quite important, namely, in this series of workshop, sessions, webinars, I talk a lot about quantitative methods, computational methods. It doesn't mean that I'm excluded the idea that qualia, right? Qualitative entities, aspects, whatever we want to call these methods, are, not essential to the art of translation. The focus now is how we use AI tools and LLMs. But of course, there is still, very human, very qualitative aspect to translation, something very personal, very experiential. And I'm not going to delve too much in these sessions about that, but by no means, I thereby intend to show that this doesn't matter. It matters very much. And that would be actually wonderful to have other webinars about that part of the work of a translator. Right now, we're working more, that's true, on aspects that are more, quantitative in nature or more, say, scientifically grounded in evidence, textual evidence. And that's where we are, right? So scholarship or primary sources. themselves. So this is an important thing, I think, to keep in mind when we talk about all this. What we're going to do so now is how to prompt, and we're going to look at, limitations first of these LLMs. And I want to start with this because, again, as you'll see, using these tools, it's as much a science as it is an art too, and a kind of like, craft. There's got to be some kind of feel developing over time when you use these tools where you know which ones are good for what, but as well how they react to different prompts and what kind of prompts can lead to pretty amazing results and what will fail. Now, the key capabilities, of course, of these models, and we talked a bit about that last time, is that they can process text at scale, which comes handy when you're dealing with large corpora, of Buddhist text. They can handle multiple languages. So if you have a text in Tibetan, had the case recently, say on Abhidharma, and you want to, have access to Buddhist literature on the topic in the Chinese canon, texts that haven't been translated into Tibetan. This is really wonderful because the way they work, they will give you access to that world too, on a semantic level, even if you don't really read Chinese, classical Chinese, for example. Then they can assist you, of course, with translation task or translation work, as we're saying. And this is really what is the good thing. Now, the bad thing is that they can totally misinterpret complex Tibetan text. It's not like we input a question, then we get an answer, and this is always correct, and this is something that is, that we should take at face value. Conversely, it's not something we should reject, and we'll see how we can use even bad answers to get where we want, right? So understanding nuanced, complex tasks can be difficult for the LLM. Getting to know what it is you're trying to do, is not something that the LLM is good at, as good as humans, I think, in a way. And so it requires really careful guidance with the model when you use the model to make sure that you will reach the kind of output you have in mind. And so here, for example, we have issues that are going to be, you will encounter these problems very often when you start working with them. You will have the feeling sometimes you're going nowhere in the conversation, you're looping. The LLM start looping, that's one problem. You'll have, of course, the limitations imposed by the context windows. We've seen that before, meaning if you want to, if you want to work with a lot of text in your project knowledge base, you're going to have to be sometimes, limited. You're going to be hit by limitations in terms of tokens that the model can process while remembering the conversation, as we saw. And this can affect the consistency and coherence of the conversation and the output, because you will have to chunk things, as we'll see. So that's a thing we have to deal with. Then you can have hallucinations. Absolutely, you can have hallucinations, and that's really an issue you want to minimize as much as possible. We'll see how we can do that. Then you can have as well data bias, at the level of the training data. So the model is going to rely on its training data, and then depending on the nature of this data, this could be as well, an issue we have to be aware of. Now we have as well other issues, which is cultural. And here in this presentation, I'm talking about cultural in the sense of, not just the culture of a country, of a place, or, of a religion. I'm talking about the culture of a whole, like a world we have to access. For example, Mahamudra, Dzogchen, Che, Abhidharma, Vinaya, all that. They have their own world and their own culture. In that sense, the model may have, different answers in different contexts, and that's something we have to be aware of. So there may be gaps there, and gaps as well in the training data of the model itself. So when you will query the model on some of these, worlds and their textual environments, you may hit a gap there, and so that's something to keep in mind. So anyways, we have to be in charge here, and the human element is fundamental, right? How do we make sure there is accuracy in the answers? How do you make sure there is respect and accuracy, but in the sense of not disrespecting literally by using these modern tools a whole universe of textual and human relationships, right? And not to mention the more ethical issues such as dealing with sacred materials only. So all these things require human supervision. And then we have to have people who can check on these things, verify, validate results. So before we go on with prompting, a basic definition. Prompting is the art of crafting, or the craft of producing instructions that the LM can use to generate accurate, meaningful responses. It's important because it will shape the quality of the outputs, produced by the model. It will determine the accuracy of translations and, in general, of the information you will get from the model. And so on a more nuanced, more sophisticated level, it may affect as well the semantic relationships, and the logical values of doctrines and the way they're rendered by the model will be different based on the prompts. I will show you crazy examples of how you can get a model to help you, get to the core of an obscure passage through this kind of logic using very advanced prompting called tree of thought. So we will deal with that probably next session. Now, the benefits of all this is that it's faster to get results, they're more consistent, and the quality is better, right? Now, the thing that's really fundamental here about prompting is the question whether you're prompting yourself actually or the model. So you're there's the chat box, you're going to ask the model something. Are you actually, when you prompt, literally just asking the model, or asking yourself first, what is you want? What is you're trying to achieve with this question? What is it is you need? What do you want it to be in terms of format and format of the output? So output, what is the nature of the output you're expecting? And so if you want to write a good prompt, essentially, you will have to think about, what your goals are, what is you really want to do there. And it's kind of fascinating too, because, it's a dialogue between the model and you, and the prompt forces you to structure your own thought and your thought process. So if you don't want what you want, the model won't be able to read your mind, right? And this is why prompting is essential, because we have to understand our goals. We will want to know what is we're talking about. So what is the task about? We want to understand maybe what's the context, what's the purpose of doing all this, and how we want the output. So clear prompting does that, and it will help you get faster and better results. Now, what are the key principles of that? On the input level, you want to provide context elements to the model. And, a role definition maybe. Tell the model you are a Tibetan studies academic, or you are a Dharma translator, you are a Tibetan native speaker, you are a specialist of Mahayana literature. So giving a role, assigning a role works. And, we'll see a lot of recipes here. They're in the slides. The slides will be made available. So even if I go fast today, going cruising through the presentation slides, you will have access to this online, and we'll share the links. And so you will be able to see more in detail how it goes. But clear objectives, having as well sometimes some guidance about how to produce the results in terms of method. So having a methodology can really help too. On the output side, specifying constraints, boundaries, limitations, specifying tone, word count, structure, register of speech, or all that is another strategy to get the results you want. Then the presentation format, the layout, or you want a table maybe, or you want just a list of bullet points. So all this is something you can script, and then you can provide examples of what you want. Sometimes when the task is a bit complicated, it sometimes helps a great deal to add an example of something is a correct answer to the type of question you have in mind. So the deal is to go from vague to precise prompting. If you go with a prompt like, can you translate this text? It's totally fine if you just want to say, get a sense of what the text is about. And with a lot of of these tools, it will do it to the best of their capacities to a degree. But there's no information here, right? No context about the text, no information about the reader or the audience, no specifying output format. I mean, there's nothing that's there that really clarifies, more complex issues. So where the prompting will come as an essential way of creating the model is by supplying information that's as accurate as possible, considering what it is you're trying to achieve. So this is fine for, I just want to have a sense quickly of what my text is about, but this is better if I want to say, produce a translation with these criteria, right? So honorific language or interpretations that are compatible with certain traditional lineage. And if I need, say, footnotes or explanations about how the model gets there, and in some passages where syntax is complex, that can be interesting. So that's an example of a prompt. Please refer to the slide, you'll see, but that's a kind of prompt where I put all the elements of, of a good prompt there. And so that will illustrate what is something that's a bit more accurate than just translate that, where it's not gonna work. Avoid vague instructions, try to maybe ask the model to verify the output. So that's something we do too, which is something very useful. Don't be overlong. The more you prompt, usually there's a kind of there are diminishing returns to prompting when the prompts become long and overly complex. In that case, it's better to think of it in terms of chunks. Query on one thing there, have an output, query in the output, and so on and so forth. It fixes things. And then there are ways of formatting the prompt, and I will show you that in a second. So if you work with long text, which happens to a lot of us, you're gonna have to probably, think about how you can segment the text, right? Or chunk the text. This means you would have to break down the text into ideally meaningful sections, semantically speaking, right? Have a kind of semantic unit, a paragraph or something, you don't want to cut something in the middle, of course, an argument, like a text. You want the whole passage to be there. So you will have to have different strategies. What you can do too is what I showed you last week, is extract with other corpus linguistic tools, information and process the information. If you're interested to this, I gave a presentation to the seminar of young Tibetologists at Oxford University online. I think it's recorded, probably on YouTube somewhere. I will try to find the link, where I work on Longshenpa's corpus, producing metadata, producing this corpus linguistic and semantic mappings that I can use then to query, read the model to get a better overview. And that I will show you too an example or two about how this works. But so you can have different strategies to work with extremely vast corpora of text or long text itself. You can, what I was explaining earlier, you can just do what's called progressive processing. You just go with interim summaries, for example, build up on that, or windowing, as well. So there are strategies. And then, of course, always when you prompt, never forget, it is very much an iterative process. So it's not like, we ask a question, we get an answer, and that's the end of the story. We can totally further refine, as a lot of you know, I'm sure, who have tried already the tools. It's really a discovery process, and that's why the human element is still very much there. It's very important and central at this stage to using these tools. And I think we will need specialists, for a long time to come of Buddhist studies, of Dharma, to make sense of what's there. At the same time, as we're saying, they will do more things and probably faster. So the role assignment, just have a look at that, maybe the slides. But you see, essentially what you're saying is that you're providing context on different levels in terms of what the job is going to be, what are the expertise you need there. So it helps the model figure things out and locate the query into a network of tasks, capabilities, skills, and purpose as well, in terms of purpose, knowing what now I'm going to be asked may be connected to this. For example, if you say you're a Tibetan scholar, you may get, the model may give you kind of more academic answers. If you go with like, you are a Tibetan Dharma teacher and you ask about something, you're going to have different answers and maybe more adapted to different audiences. So the way you will shape the role of the LLM will impact the output. Multi-shot prompting is another strategy. So here you can have a look at the slide maybe later, but it's basically prompting, having a strategy that relies on several prompts from the onset. Like the way you will think of your prompt will integrate from the beginning, these more complex structures of prompting. So here you can, for example, ask the AI to summarize a passage. Here the example is about the Lamling Chenmo, and then demonstrate a summary format. So you provide an example, and then you go with your actual Enigma text query, the one you really want to have. So you can teach, providing an example, build a complex prompt, and work your way toward the result you want. And so that's another very interesting way of doing this. Definitely something you should ideally experiment with. Have a look, try to see what works or not. But what is good when you do that is you'll get different results, and you start developing a feel with the model about how to work with it. Now, if really you have complex stuff, you may want to use these XML kind of tags, here. So here it helps the model figure things out in a way that's very structured. And sometimes it does help when the prompt is a bit complex, when you have a lot of text, you're supplying in the prompt. Here, for example, there's going to be a whole bunch of text here. And so maybe you think using a prompt is important. So this is, using XML tags, will help the model figure things. Okay, my source text is here and stops there, right? You can then have constraints or context, tasks. You have different tags you can use to help communicate, your work goes to the model essentially. So here, active prompting is really, I think for us translators and researchers, super important. It's just going to be something we have to do to get what we want. Again, we have a translation, and I will show you when we get to the translation session, like checking really the tools. So Mona.ai, Dharma Mitra, Claude, ChatGPT. When you test these tools, when you work with them, some of them allow you to keep asking questions. For example, if you're with Claude and you ask for a translation, you can go on and say, okay, explain these technical terms, check doctrinal accuracy. What I was explaining in last session, you may have overlap sometimes in terms of semantic value of Tibetan terms for their English translation, but sometimes it doesn't quite work. And you want to check that too, because, if you have this very, very accurate and rigorous text where, say, for example, if it's a pramana text and you have the notion of yapti, right, there, if you include in the English translations things that wouldn't be included by the technical Sanskrit or Tibetan term, then you may have arguments that won't work anymore, things like this. And so here you may want to check these things too. And active prompting lets you do that. You can have a whole bunch of prompts to finally get somewhere, and that will lead us. So here's an example. You can maybe check it on the slides. I think we should probably go now and look at some practical applications of all this. But prompting, in a word, is particularly important with models that cannot be further fine-tuned. it seems. And there, prompting is really important because that's one way you have to indicate to tell the model what is you want and how to do it. So you can have complex prompts by supplying examples that will literally be like a mini training, right, of the model. And this is where prompting becomes central, really. For this kind of task, you can supply 1, 2, 3 examples of a task and its output in a controlled way so that the model can say, okay, this is what I'm being asked now, and this is the expected result. So it's almost something you could see as not just a query sometimes, but a mini training of the LLM on the fly, right? And so there are different ways to do this. This presentation, I was very much using Claude's documentation, on prompting that Anthropic, the parent company of Claude.ai, has on its website. I try to make it maybe easier to connect to because it's a document's a bit complex at times. So we just have here basic instructions. It's a summary of I think about 6, 7 documents on prompting and including Anthropic recommendations there. So I think if you look at that and read it a bit at home, it will really give you a good grounding in prompting, beyond just asking a simple question, maybe vague, in natural language that the model won't connect to. And this is where it's very important for us when we evaluate, whether these models are useful or not. It's very important to consider how we deal with them, because if we have no sense of prompting and we engage in some tasks, chances are we won't get results we find very useful, but that may be not a problem, intrinsically that the model has as much as our lack of experience and knowledge with these things. So prompting is important. There's no way you can go wrong. So you can experiment, that's a wonderful thing, really, I must say. You can play with it and you can just literally, experiment, try things, have ideas. We are creating a Discord channel. So we'll make the link available. We'll post prompts to do things, prompts we tried. We'll share these prompts there. And I hope that we'll have a little community in the future developing and sharing more information, because everyone may experiment and come up with different ideas, different prompts. And I think it's really nice if we can share our prompts and see, what works, what doesn't, how we can refine prompts and get better results. So the kind of like collective effort there, having this kind of collaboration could be extremely fruitful and beneficial to so many translators and researchers in the field. That's it for today's presentation. I don't know if we have questions maybe at this stage before we look at practical case studies.
Yeah, please use the Q&A function if you have any questions. I see there's one question coming through that is about XML. Is there provision to use XML doc types to anticipate source context?
I'm not sure I get the
I'm not sure.
question, to be honest. So I'm sorry if I'm, if I'm going to give a bad answer here. But my understanding is that that's not really XML, right? It's more like XML type of tags. But apart from that, it's they call them in the Anthropic documentation XML tags. Now, for those of us who are really proficient at that, I mean, that's as complex as it gets, you know what I'm saying? And that's my understanding at this stage. So, but yeah, if we can look into it.
All right. I don't see any other questions coming up so far. Maybe we'll wait a moment in case people are typing them in now.
That's good.
Let me check on Facebook if there's any questions coming in. There's a question. Can you please explain methods to train the models with new literary genres, such as for medical literature where resources are currently limited?
Right. So haven't tried that yet. And that's a very important question. A lot of us are interested in this, and I think that's that's part of the conversation we're having with Kurt Keitzer and Sebastian Nerlich at Berkeley University, who actually are the ones producing these wonderful tools, such as Mitra, right? And the capabilities we have right now we have ChatGPT, for example, that can be fine-tuned. Claude.ai cannot, to the best of my knowledge, be fine-tuned at this stage, meaning the prompting with Claude.ai is going to be a lot more important. And so, what we would have to do is in future iteration of the models that are being developed, we should include training data sets that will cover most genres of Tibetan literature in general, and that would be central to training better models that have better access to different genres, different registers of speech, different type of text literature, and so that's the stage where this should be done. And I think we're kind of working on that together with Kurt and Sebastian. The other thing too is that you can add this RAG type of structure of the model where you can add your own documentation, and the model will before answering any question look at these models. We will see a few examples of that. They will look at these PDFs, and there are PDFs or text files or any format like that, really. And the good thing here is that the model can tap into this added layer of documentation. Now, this type of of project knowledge base, that's the term I use when I refer to that, has different names across models. Perplexity will call that space, I think. LLM Notebook will call that source text, sources. Cloud will call that the project knowledge. And ChatGPT as a project too, I think. So there are different terms you will see. We'll see them. If we don't remind me during the case studies, I will try to show you guys exactly this. But you can add sources. You can add PDFs basically is good, or any other thing, and that could help you. For example, if you're working on something extremely specialized, that will help the model definitely produce better results. Now, the fine-tuning, there's one thing I haven't tried, I was mentioning, which is with ChatGPT, theoretically, you can fine-tune. So if you have the right data set about a certain field, you could, fine-tune the model to just get better at that. How would that work with medical literature, Tibetan literature? I don't know yet, but that's definitely something I'm going to experiment with in the coming weeks, like saying this kind of fine-tuning of ChatGPT, is that something that's useful or not? It could be, but yeah, we'll have to see.
All right. Another question coming in. Have you experimented with letting the LLM create or redefine prompts themselves?
Yes, so that's a good way to do it. And for that, if you have access to ChatGPT, I recommend using O1. O1 is the thinking model. So you have a choice of models. We'll see. I have one case study with ChatGPT. I can show you where you choose the model. So you can change the model. And most of these tools, like Claude.ai, NotebookLM, Perplexity, you have ChatGPT, you have Google AI Studio with Gemini. You have the possibility to change the model you use. There's always a function on the interface where you can change the model, and some models are better at doing different things. So the reasoning models are the ones that are, the thinkers out there. And so usually you can't input a lot of data there, but asking them to prompt is a good thing. So yesterday I was, trying to produce for our Discord channel a small icon with DALL-E of ChatGPT, which is a kind of drawing, and it produces images and all that, photos, right? And I didn't have time to, I was late. And I'm like, where you wanted to have this little like image for this that Discord server. And I was thinking, okay, yeah, what to do there? I mean, reading the art of prompting for images is a whole thing. It's a whole thing. So I just went to, O1 and I said, this is what I would like, the colors, the kind of like, I like a Doma wheel and a lattice with warm, red, rust, orange colors, and no blue, no green, all that. Like I had a kind of idea about that. So I said, just write a prompt that will get that for me. So it's exactly what you were asking. And so, O1 design prompt, I got somewhere with that, which is good because this is always a cost benefit thing with these tools, right? Is how much time would that cost you to actually, now if you're good at it and if you know better, you can even come up, I think, with better results than O1 for prompting. But it would require so much experience and time and everything. You don't have that necessarily. So asking a thinking model to craft a prompt for you can go a long way. Now, if you have a sense of what the prompts can do, it will be even more helpful because you can guide the thinking model toward one solution that fits really well with what it is you want to do. And to give you an example, next week, we are going to talk about the 4 noble prompts, which are more complex prompts. So, agentive prompt, algorithmic, chain of thought, and tree of thought. They're more complex prompts, really. And so it's easier to work with a thinking model by saying, okay, because that, for example, agentive prompts will tell you about a game plan you don't have. Like, how should I do that? What method should I use? So like an agent, you let them decide. That's what we'll see. In that case, if this is the kind of question you have in mind for which you want this type of approach, it's what you want, then you can ask the thinking model to prompt something using this type of prompt, which will give you better results in that case. So there are a lot of strategies you can use like that. And totally, you can write a prompt that's complex, for example, using XML tags, having a complex prompt, and then say to the model and ask the thinking model, to review it, to streamline it, and to add any suggestions for improvement if relevant. That kind of short instructions will give you a good review by the thinking model, sorry. All right.
Okay, great. Maybe you better move on to the next.
Yeah, I know. I'm like,
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our little case studies. All right, so here you see, well, actually, it's good. I'm happy I'm landing here because I'm going to show you guys the project knowledge I was talking about. So this is here, this is the place where you can drop kind of like, resources for your query that will assist the model. So it's like having a mini documentation base or, knowledge base that you ingest into the LLM through this functionality. You have that for most models. Again, here, Claude, we're on Claude, and that's going to be called project knowledge. So, and here you have special instructions, So I have an extra. All right, so that's my general instruction here for this kind of particular task I want to do. So you have these project instructions. I mentioned that last time, but that's quite important because that's instructions that will be applied by the model for the entire conversations happening within this project space, in which you can have several conversations. And this will always be a go-to set of instructions, no matter what you're going to do next. And here, I'm going to just ask for a comparison of catalog. So checklist of text. Once texts are identified, you become a professional AR, reviewing findings of your Tibetan academic colleagues by checking their results. That's a verification prompt, you see. I want the model to check on its results. So I'm going to assign 2 roles. One is producing, data and output. The other one is checking and validating that it's correct, having another verification there. And so that's the instruction for that kind of stuff, because here I want something that's kind of, accurate. Now, for the, more project-related task, I'm having this other set here of instructions that I can ask. And you see I'm assigning a role. to Claude. So illustrating what we've seen, that was more theoretical. So now at the level where rubber meets the road, that's what's happening. Yes, I'm like, you're an academic, a scholar of Tibetan Buddhist studies, you read Sanskrit and are a Tibetan native speaker with an education in traditional Buddhist scholarship. You will help me to explore catalogs of canonical Buddhist texts from the Tibetan tradition. So I'm kind of framing what this conversation or this project is about. It's a broad frame. That's what you do. That's what I'm going to do. And that's how I need your help here in that function of you acting as someone who knows these things. So why is the question? And here I have a not too complex prompt, a bit messy, but my prompts are messy. So, usually I go, having talked about all these nice, sophisticated, clear, accurate prompts, I usually go and prompt on top of my head. And then if it works or not, then I adjust. And there's no shame doing this, really, with these tools, because it's really part of the exploration process. There's no right or wrong. We have to explore things and see what we want to do with it, if it makes sense or not. So first, just like, take a dive in there, throw something at the model, see what's going on. And then if I see there are issues, I'll refine the prompt. That's how I work usually. And then spend more time structuring the prompt, but sometimes it works. So let's go for it. I uploaded 2 catalogs of the Tengger, Dergi, and Natong. And here I'm relying on data from the Vienna University website, RKTS, where they have all these wonderful data sets about all the witnesses they have for Conjure and Tengger, including catalog lists and lists. So please identify all potential commentaries on the Bodhisattva. I'm sloppy, I don't put any diacritics, the Chunjuk, among the texts found in these catalogs. And then, so first step, right? Second step, compare then on this basis the traditions of the Tengger and how they relate to one another with regard to these commentaries. Methodology, only return potential candidates, then discuss results. Oh, I don't want the model to send me, because I asked that to another model, and the other model, which was a Google AI, a Gemini basically model, and the model went line by line, and we have 4,000 texts or so in the Tengger. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, just return potential candidates. Don't like for every line tell me this is not Bodhisattva commentary. 3,900 times something. So anyways, so Natong, and you see I had the problem here with the size of the context window. So I had to go with Natong first. Then I remove my documentation here, PDF, or and then I input it Dergi, because the model, you see the size here, just Dergi alone takes 80% of the knowledge capacity. I can't have both catalogs. If the texts are large, you can't have a bunch there. You limit. So what do? Well, you chunk. And I'm chunking by first going with Natong. So I uploaded Natong, which I removed later. And here I get the answer. Okay, so this is the first answer I get here. So it's giving me a list of potential candidates, which is quite good, very accurate, actually, quite nice. And it adds a little discussion, because you see the thing is in the prompt, I asked the model to work as a Tibetan, Buddhist studies like scholar. So I'm gonna have a discussion that's kind of scholarly. That's what you get, this little analysis and discussion when you frame like cast the model into a role. And so here you had a little like analysis. So quite interesting. Yeah. So you see why it's actually super interesting. We're getting there. So anyways, this we don't care about. And now I'm saying, okay, produce the same results, but add the RKTS ID number. And that's a very important thing, because if you're familiar with the Conjure Tengger text, particularly on the University of Vienna database, they have 2 numbers. They have one number, which is their number in the witness here. It's Natong in the collection. And they have another number, which is a code, an ID text ID, provided by the Vienna team, so that we can make sense of how these texts are related to one another across editions, across collections. And so that's like an ID number that is very useful to compare, for example, text, whether we're talking about the same text across editions and collections, because otherwise there's no way to know it. And the data set here is structured. People looked, verified, checked that, so I'm going to use that. So anyway, I'm getting this nice list with the number here. And you see the model is saying exactly that. And that's quite amazing. I mean, look at that. Having these RKTS numbers will be very helpful for cross-referencing with other catalogs, identifying potential duplicates. It's giving me the logic. And that's why I wanted that in the first place. But that's quite amazing to see that, the model identifies this as being useful. Okay, so now I want everything and to make sure I verify, so I won't change it in the title or, anything similar, really. And look, let me check for additional text. So verifying, keeping, this iterative process, this active prompting. You go with several iterations, see if something comes there is important, because the way these models work in a way is kind of interesting compared to other computational methods. They're not linear and they model humans. And I'm wondering sometimes if they didn't model our flaws as well. Like the models will, skip some important parts of the information, just like we would do. And a linear algorithm in a Python script will not do that. It will clack and you can rely on the results. And which is why I'm a big advocate for, combining these different methods. If you're very thorough and you want very reliable results, it's way better to build a data set of metadata about the text and then query that, as opposed to just letting the model, find things. But anyways, even there, it's quite simple. Let's do it. So we get additional text, which are the text we've been working on here on our Bodhicitta new project at Sadhara Foundation. And so it's identified here. And look at, it's telling me the RKTS T0 suggests this may be a special case. And indeed, when you don't have an ID number here, it means there is a problem. You have a bunch of RKTS T0, meaning there are issues of attribution or the issues about the text themselves, the structure and the commentaries. And the model is giving me this part here, this information, which is really amazing. Really, so anyways, it found the two really interesting texts that I am interested in. And the reason why it's interesting. It's because they're not in the Derge. Tanger, amazingly enough, it's countered by Atisha in two parts, and it's the Bodhisattva Bhashya by Atisha, and it's very interesting that the model can do that. Now look, that is super interesting too, right? The model for the owl, and suggesting you want me to check that, because that's true. That's in Tibetan very often, right? We have this kind of possible variation. So the model is I'm saying that, okay, we're not going to do that, but it's very interesting. Linguistically, it knows that, we can have a spelling issue on this kind of prefix constants, right? So anyways, now I do the same thing with the Derge catalog. I get the results. And now I'm okay, results with a lot of different things. And look at that. So it's making a whole analysis, okay? Comparison with Norton, because that's something I was asking here. So, compare results with those of Norton above and discuss them. Highlight discrepancies. They might reveal texts that are only found in one edition and are thus less known, although they may actually be quite important. So it goes on list, and we have only 11 here, text, and goes with core similarities, it's okay, and then key differences, and look at that. So it's going to give me these two things, which are basically the two parts of Atisha's commentary I just talked about, that are cataloged in that way, and it isolates the one commentary that's missing from the Derge, danger. And honestly, it's really, and look, it's fascinating. And it's if you go hand by hand, can you imagine if you use, say, a PDF and you search for change across the two, it's going to take a little while, and then you have to make a list, by hand and everything. So that's the kind of thing that takes literally 5 minutes, and you find something. So it's very interesting, I think, for building a library of sources and being exhaustive. Why do we need that? We are starting a new project, new translation project, a new research project, or we want to know everything there is about something because that's what we're going to do for the next 6 months or next year. Well, these are tools you can use to do that. So moving now to another important thing, which is the Tibetan text verification. So once you have your Tibetan text, you may want to have an e-text. You may want to check the e-text. You may want to, like, have a sense of whether the text in Wylie or in Unicode is problematic, reliable or not, or maybe you're comparing various editions as well, and we will get there, saying how we can go even one step further to do that. But here we're looking at the Gesar sadhanas. It's if I remember when I was working on that, so I've been translating Gesar rituals from at the very inception of the Gesar tradition until Nipam, and so there are Dagnong, so and as well terma of Gesar at some point. And this is another world, right, with its own terminology, sometimes dialectal kind of phrases and things like that. So anyways, here I'm inputting a short string for the sake of and I'm asking, look at that and show me anything that looks like weird, basically, give feedback and suggest like corrections, right, in case there is something. So here I deliberately messed up the text a bit on this one, on both just to test, So I added like mistakes there. But then I didn't expect anything like that. And that came out. And that's super interesting too, because that's more complex passages, more complex phrases, more colloquial expressions, And we have here a kind of like discussion of these terms in the Wylie or in the Unicode that would have been the same thing. So it suggests corrections. It suggests, translation, which now we're not really interested in. I don't want yet to go into the translation, prompt. We'll see that later. But you see, that's what you can get. So you can correct your text, or you can have a sense of, are they spelling mistakes? When you write a footnote or when you prepare your text initially, having a list of all these like potential issues is amazing. I mean, before you start translating the passage, having already an overview about the source text and what kind of like issues there are there, so that you don't get stuck on like, why is this thing like, having some broader view on that is important. And it doesn't mean the model is right about everything, by the way. But I can guarantee you that when I read that, I was like, I gotta check these things again. I have to get back to my translation, look at the text again. I definitely want to have a look at that. And so you see, again, this is like getting to better translations, getting to, a better sense of what's going on, not being sloppy about the translation, understanding where there may be issues with the source text is important. And so that's part of documenting everything before, doing the job, or you can do it at the end too, in a way, as a post-translation thing. But I guess it's going to, for us translators, right, of Tibetan text, we're going to want to have a workflow that will integrate these tools, because you can save time if you integrate these conversations at the right stage of your project, right? So that's something important. Okay, so now I'm providing a bit more context. I'm saying this is part of a pure vision of Gesar. Review your translation. And so, this changes the context significantly. So the model is like, let me revise my analysis with this important context, And so there's a whole thing here, discussion against of the terms, and I find it fascinating, really. And then it suggests another thing. So yeah, look, it's discussing that in this context, maybe we're talking about experiential science and expressions that refer to, altered states of consciousness, or, the awakening of the warrior spirit in the context of the Gesar world. So interesting. Anyways, that's more like something we can get back to when we talk about translation issues. But, here, I wanted to show this kind of stuff here. For example, how you set up, you establish the text in a way, or how you establish the areas of the text that need further consideration while translating. Well, here's my text, please give me the Wylie, including the mistakes, with a note every time you want to suggest something, an alternative reading, and revise the spelling in that case, maybe, or say something about it. And you see, I indicate the format. So remember, when we're talking about prompting, to get back to that, so I give some formatting instructions here. Your note should be below the text. I don't want the note in the middle of the text. I want my clean Wylie text, for example. So a little thing. But you see, this is how you would prompt to get what you want. And then you get this kind of stuff, which is very nice. So, yeah, just like, so here I'm criticizing the translation. But anyways, that's discussion for quality of translation, how we go into refining the result. And here I would say, for example, there's something where we have impersonal verbs sometimes, right? We don't know who the subject is, which in Tibetan is a big and common issue in producing accurate translations. So here, for example, there is an issue with just that, and the model failed on that, but it's okay. We can work our way through it and get to a better result. And this is part of experimenting, seeing how from something that first gets out as unrefined can get better. And where the discussion goes will be on points that may be raised by the model about things we didn't think about first. And that's why it's not about so much. And for translators out there at this stage, I think it's important to see that it's not about replacing the translator, but that's really asking ourselves the right questions, having more context information, having red flags sometimes about things we would have missed, or suggestions about alternative translations, so where we want to go with that. So that's another example. We're still like in this phase where we're working with the primary sources. And so here now we have something a bit more complex. It's I tested the model on how it can deal, and it's Cloud. Cloud is very good for Tibetan at this stage. So, and here we're trying to see whether we can produce critical editions in the future. As we know, it's a kind of tedious work. You have to be meticulous. It's fastidious. I mean, you have to really, And Sutra I worked on and translated a few years back, the Chintya Buddha Vishaya, which is in the Ratnakuta's collection of text. It has about 30 witnesses, and so aligning them or determining which one is really important for the project is a central question before you start translating, because ideally you want to end up having not too many texts to look at when you're as a translator. You want to do the job, but at the same time you don't want to use witness that's going to be extremely contaminated with a bunch of bad readings. So what do? And you have to align. So here I wrote a whole methodology to work on conjurer text to streamline the number of witnesses you choose to work with, like a core team of witnesses. And I followed the methodology, developed it, but I followed the methodology that was designed by Maurice Bevno, a Oxford scholar who worked on Christian medieval texts where contamination was an issue. And so I kind of adapted this, and that will be published in the Festschrift for Helmut Ascher, I think probably this year or next year. And the deal here is that we sample these witnesses, and we will cluster them, and we will select them based on the idea that we don't want to have witnesses that are always wrong together, always vary together in their readings. We're going to have a core team of witnesses that never vary together, because we want to increase our chances of preserving the original reading. So what we do is we have to align, and that's very, we can use Colatics, Python scripts to do that, which I did in that case, but with the model, we can get results. So here I'm giving a bunch of, it's a very simple example. We don't have a lot of edition here. We have we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 witnesses. So there are, and you see it's sloppy. I did that literally in 2 minutes. I didn't try to format anything, right? I just took the sample, put the sigla at the beginning for the witnesses, and then good luck, Cloud. Have fun with that. So okay, I have created a critical edition and everything, and we're at the very beginning of that. I don't think it's something you can use yet to to fully produce critical editions. But look at that, you know. I mean, I checked it. So we're at the very beginning is the incipit of the sutra. And when you look at you know, the way it's dealing with this, we have no shade. I removed the shade because I didn't want to take into account the shade, the variation in terms of shade and all that. But we all been there, and you know, it's like, whoa, you know, it takes hours. And can you imagine when you have 30 tags and you have to do that? So that's the kind of like, you know, and then the other thing that's good, it gives you a sense of clusters of, you know, clusters of witnesses that you may want to consider. So the alignment works, and I had a conversation months ago and recently an email from Elizabeth Callahan. I don't know, Elizabeth, if you're on the call, but you know, where we were talking about Elizabeth has been doing an amazing, I mean, really like it's a wonderful work on the Damlang and Kagyu text, and you know, there are some very complex issues there, particularly because you have different source tags and you have to make sense of them. So we had this like discussion about how we can do that, how we can, you know, get a sense as well of the editions. And as you know, a lot of texts nowadays are being re-edited by monasteries that produce e-texts or publications in Tibetan. And so we have a new edition of Longchenpa Sumbum or you know, I mean, all collected works that we put together into a new edition, things like that. We have new editions of this, of that. Now, what text did they use? What are they drawing from, you know, and what kind of like a schematic relationship we have with previous editions? Well, this is something that's not always clear in terms of, you know, how these editions are produced. So these tools, by sampling, can help you get a sense of that and say, oh, okay, I see, they looked at that, plus they added a few things. And so it's really something that's going to be a game changer for people who need to establish their text. Now, for example, that on the Achintya Buddha Vishaya here, so here I put the whole like alignment by collatex of the 30, you know, 30 witnesses, and I was interested about going into the, you know, going into the schematic relationships or clusters. I think there's too much contamination to have a schematic tree in the case of at least the Ratnakuta collection, Conjure collection, and I suspect that's true probably for the Sutra, the Dode as well section, for example. But anyways, so the idea here is, you know, providing the methodology that I developed to deal with that, 28 witnesses, then the core alignments of the samples, the passages that have been sampled, and ask the model to discuss. Now we're going to discuss, you see, the Tselpa line, so Derge, Litsong, and Beijing, for example, Tempoma, and all the different groups, such as the Western Tibetan group of, you know, of texts like Gunla, Pudrak, all that. So anyway, Puktar, sorry, here, and Pudrak is F, highly contaminated, actually. So anyways, here we go into a conversation about how do you, on the basis of textual variation, you know, produce some clusters. And it took me really, you know, months to work on that. I mean, it's really first developed a methodology, but to you know, check all the samples, align them manually, check the Python alignments, and then, you know, group them by clusters. And I believe that at this stage, the work is not satisfying. I wouldn't rely on all this. And there's a whole conversation here. I'm showing you literally, you know, that's really the lab, you know, the AI Dharma lab, where in the lab, there's no finished product here. It's a kind of complex conversation about various aspects, you know, to see if we can get some, at some point somewhere, of this type of analysis. But what I mean is that I do believe that by fine-tuning a model in the future, we will be able to produce, you know, critical editions, at least reduce the number of witnesses we need to consider significantly. And there'll be a lot of like, you know, time saving there, while maintaining philological integrity when it comes to the way we engage, you know, this material. So anyways, complex like discussion here, but I was very impressed. I think we will have good news soon, you know, about that, and that will change the work, because as some of you know, BDRC, Eliaru, and Eric Werner have been working on an OCR tool that is going to be able to OCR the collections that Bruno Lenné and Markus Fiebeck in Vienna have, for example, for all these canonical texts. And anyone who's working on that literature soon enough should be able, I think, to have these possibilities of having a whole pipeline of integrated steps toward like either full-fledged critical editions or at least a clustering of witnesses according to transmission lines. And so instead of having to deal with no other witness and just the dergate, if you want to produce a better work, I guess, then you have to engage with that type of work, but you won't have to do it on that scale. You'll just maybe have 3 or 4 witnesses you'll work with, will cut down the work, like the amount of work significantly, while maintaining and possibly even increasing the quality of the readings, of all these textual environments. So amazing, I think, here breakthrough that we will see in the coming months or years, with this type of work. So now we're still working with primary literature, right? Another example, we had this question recently. Alex, who is on the team, Alex Catanese, was working on the text, and we had this discussion about the Bodhicitta Vivarana. I mentioned that briefly last time, I think, but we had 2 versions of the text and very little time. Sometimes you have a lot of work, so preparing the webinars and stuff, and so on the fly, we have to come up with, okay, what is the text we're interested in? You see they come together, the 1800, the 81. So anyways, you want to be able to make sense of this text quickly, have a sense. So, a little like a prompt here, very short. And on the fly, you see, again, model is answering. So let me analyze these 2 versions of the Bodhicitta Vivarana. So important text by supposedly Nagarjuna, probably the later Nagarjuna, or, it's a very interesting text, actually. It's been translated, I think, by Christian Lindner, right, Marcus? And then it's been translated in French too. I think Christian, actually, who is here today, I think, translated the text to Christian Charrier, I think, right, into French. So we have, so we have this, and the text is online. Tupten Jinpa translated it, if I'm correct. So very important text, and you see here we have very quickly a kind of comparison of, in terms of the incipit, so the image, then the translators, the column, looking at the content as well, the structure of the text, the outline, right? And so clearly you can see in a second that at least you see in a second you're dealing with 2 different texts, and I leave it at that right now. But you see how you can pick it up and just go and proceed with more, more accurate prompts to have a better sense of what's going on. And then you look at the text and then you choose your text. But that's just a small example to illustrate that how radically this is changing the nature of the work. And you don't have to do a full-fledged reading of everything to get a sense of, I want this text or not. This is Perplexity. And now we're turning a bit more towards not just the sources, but the scholarship. A big part of our work too in this, pre-translation phase is to build up some, documentation, right? That includes, papers, dissertations, monographs, everything that can be useful, or resources really, to work on this text. So Perplexity is really good for that, and it's really good if you don't have a stash of PDF. Some of us have worked on these things or on a particular genre or author for years, and then we have everything there is about that person, really. And sometimes you would, even as a student, when I started, I would go and scan books and spend hours, just scanning a PDF to make it searchable and things like that, having a private copy, having the book, of course, and things like, but what I mean is that you have this kind of necessity to consult whatever, right? That's fundamental in the way we work, is we can't ignore previous scholarship, previous translations, like maybe other translators, normal translators have done a great job, or other researchers published a piece of information about that technical term in this journal, this. So we all have this kind of like wants, right? Having these things and building this data, this knowledge base that will help us. And so here, if you don't have PDF, Perplexity can help you build like a research library with online resources that are free. And here you have these spaces like the knowledge space, or the knowledge base. This is where you can add resources. Here you have your previous discussions, and you can with Perplexity. And I wanted to show you that screen first, because you can ask to search across the entire internet by selecting this in the pro version, at least, I think. Then you can ask, you can contextualize what it is you're trying to do on this. So you have functions like this on different LLM interfaces, and you have to see if you can find them, use them. But there is something you can use to define a bit the kind of conversation you want to have. Now here, okay, oh nope. Oh, that's okay. Well, you see, demo. So it's basically, you see I clicked here. That's my documentation. So it's Sadra books, published by Sadra and Shamba. So it's the amazing work that Sarah Harding did on Turn. And so we have Damagde here, instructions. And say I don't know anything about that. I start a new project. I have no idea what Tur is about. I know very little. I know they do what they do, but I'm not really, an expert. And I want to start educating myself. And this is where as well these models are amazing. They can educate yourself on the fly. Like honestly, anyone who is like motivated with something like that can become not a specialist, but quite good at something in a very short amount of time. Like we can educate ourselves in say 5 days to reach a level of knowledge in something with these tools that would have taken months before. And that's something really to keep in mind too, I think, as translators, is that there are different aspects in our work. Sometimes we'll hit pramana technical terms. So what is going on there? Well, these tools can really help us, build some knowledge and expertise by identifying key literature, by summarizing it, by engaging in a whole conversation about it. So here I'm just asking, give me an overview of the Tibetan practice of church, explain the space files. I am limiting the model to these files I've uploaded there, which are these two sources, because I know they're reliable, right, in that case. And so I'm having like an answer. So I'm not going on Wikipedia, I'm not going on the web. I want just to work with these two sources. And that's what Perplexity can help you do. So we'll summarize everything, and then you can go like with more questions. So that's really a dialogue, and that's the amazing thing. It's like having a tutor, a personal tutor or teacher that's right there with you, and you keep asking questions. I remember when we were kids, we'd say like, why is that person on that bike? And well, because maybe he's going somewhere. Why is she going somewhere? And then because she needs to do something. She needs to go grocery shopping. So why does she need grocery shopping? How kids think. And it goes like that and like that. That's literally what you can do with Perplexity. You can, at your own pace, with your own questions, build up knowledge, incredible amount of knowledge in the way that fits you, the way you want it to be, and not just taking a lecture or having, And so that's quite amazing, really. And here I have a general question. Well, how is that different, from other Tibetan practices? And so you see, unique philosophical approach. For example, things like this. It's starting becoming more precise. You see, we have quotes as well. So, and then what Perplexity does is it will give you a list of expected questions by someone who doesn't know too much about that yet. So, for example, how do Chur practitioners prepare for a Chur ritual? So look, it's now the model is looking into the documentation, the project documentation, the two sources, so translations that Sarah produced. And here it comes with, physical setup, sacred space, offerings, arrangements, mental preparation, preliminary practices, and daily practices, really. And so you can go on and sometimes you have an answer that's good. Sometimes you have to ask a follow-up question and, be more specific. But you can do that with the model. It's really good. And you can ask the model to go and look for more PDF to online, as I showed you. I think I have another example here, then where we'll see how to do that. All right, so now another shameless plug. That's my book on MIPAM. And, we have another possibility on NotebookLM, which is to produce, podcasts on a book. So meaning if you need to be in your car and you still want to learn something about your new translation project you just were signed up for, and you're like, oh my God, I really have to know more about that. I'm going to have to listen to, a podcast maybe when I'm even driving because I'm short on time. Well, what NotebookLM does is it turns a PDF into a 15-minute podcast. It gives you kind of an overview what the book is about and everything. So it's a pretty nice thing. But crazy enough, it lets you now even interact with that. And I don't know if you've seen that. Let's see if it works. Please, Marcus, if it doesn't work, let me know. It's going to be, we're going to try to see if this is working. All right.
Go a way to dismantle all those mental habits we have.
I hear it.
Ones that make us think we're separate, that everything's separate.
So we use our minds to deconstruct our own minds.
Exactly. It's about questioning, examining, and then finally seeing the emptiness of all those beliefs we hold on to so tightly.
Yeah.
What do you mean with beliefs? Oh, wait. Uh-oh. Not working. Let's do it again.
You have to, the join function is not.
No, I think you have to play and then you join, you interrupt them. Like when they.
Oh, really?
Let's see. Yeah, let's see. Let's try it.
Is this idea?
Oh, yeah, for sure. He wrote, in the sphere of the fundamental sameness, free from dualistic aspects.
Uh-oh.
Huh.
All right. What it does, I'm sorry, I tried that 3 times yesterday, it worked. What it does here, which is crazy, is that you see the podcast conversation they have about that book that's been produced on the basis of PDF, right? So what it does is that you can jump in, ask a question, and it will answer based on the information in the PDF. That is insane. And I was trying this yesterday. Oh crap, I'm so bummed it's not working. But
it does say it's beta, interactive mode is beta.
Yeah. Just the apprehended object.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna get anything from these guys today. Oh, maybe if we restart audio. Let's see. Anyways, the point is you can produce, it's really a learning tool, okay, but you can here just produce very quickly, podcast about a book and then interrogate the podcast speakers. So, and go into a question mode. And so that's something really new.
All right, so get this, you guys sent us down a rabbit hole, and it's a deep one. We're diving into radical non-duality, and oh, hey, welcome. What's up?
What is radical non-duality? I want to know now.
Okay, so radical non-duality is like the core concept here.
Yeah, it's the whole shebang. So let's unpack this.
It's basically this idea that at the deepest level, there are no separations.
Like no.
Oh, back to our listener. What's up?
What do you mean with separation?
That's a great question. And it's totally key to understanding non-duality. Okay, so when we talk about separation, we mean the way we usually experience the world.
Yeah, it's like we see ourselves as separate from others, from the environment, from
Anyway, so you get the thing, but that's again a new way of learning, and for us it's important too. I think it's not just, it's a bit gimmicky, but it for some of us it may actually work, like getting into technical aspects, and like Sundro Yermet, there's a whole thing on the book about that. I can imagine that it's interesting to ask questions if you're and get, as you listen, a kind of little like a feedback on what these terms are about as you listen. So anyways, a lot of tools with LLM these days. Every day we have something new almost. And here I'm using Claude. It's on most serious note, but to read a Japanese article is quite important about historical events related to the Kamashila, I think, in India. We're in the 10th century or so. I think that's what the article is about, time of Atisha and the whole, end of these big Mahaviharas. So step, produce a 500-word summary of this article, and you see, this is what you get here. So the prompt is, I post all these prompts and examples probably on the Discord channel, but you see it's giving you the 500-word summary of the article. Then I'm interested in the Bodhisattva transmission lines here, so I want to know more. So it's telling me Vibhuti Chandra is mentioned here, and there's, I expect the paper to give me information on that. So anyways, language, that's what we're talking about when the semantic mapping, the way these LLMs are built, they have access to a bunch of languages. And if you're working on you're using papers in say languages you can read, scholarship in French, German, Japanese, Chinese, it can be a really useful tool. And keep in mind that now, and that's really quite important in some areas, right, of what we're doing, but we have access to Japanese scholarship now like never before, for example. And that's really a game changer too. So here we have these now topics that are really border between primary and secondary sources, research, and and original text. For example, catalogs, looking at things in massive catalogs. So here I upload in ChatGPT this catalog of text of Tibet, the canonical text kept in the Institute of Orient Manuscripts in St. Petersburg. So Russian Academy of Science is here what we're talking about. It's a big catalog. I don't want to go and necessarily look at everything there's here, but you see, I'm asking for an overview of the file, and it's giving me this volume includes 3,800 items. And I'm looking for some, for example, versions of the Sandhanamuchana Sutra, because I translated this text, and I'm like, I was curious, do they have anything interesting here? I don't want to browse the whole thing, you know what I'm saying? So I'm just like going there. Does it contain any reference to the Gongjang, right? To the Sandhanamuchana Sutra? Yes, and now it's good. So, okay, well, let's have a closer look. Sloppy prompting, by the way, everything we shouldn't be doing. So, it's vague, but it gives me a list of, what I can expect here. So how many versions of the text are referenced in this volume? And then it's going to list for me, what they have. They don't have much. It doesn't seem there is anything too interesting. So now I move to the other sutra, the Achintya Buddha Vishaya Nirdesha Sutra I showed you earlier when we were talking about these alignments and critical additions, or it can be done with models. So here I want to know that. And so again, there's nothing. So we're like, okay, what about the Ratnakuta section of the Conjurer? What do we have? And here I go with a prompt that's a bit more detailed. There are 49 sutras in that collection, in that sub-collection of the Conjurer. And I want to know there's if there are anything, if there is anything of interest, here. And so we talk about the output formats, you see, and so how we want to have it. And I want a structure, a table. So there's a whole discussion about how the table format should be. And then we get this, it gives me the page number, the version, and it's quite interesting because this is not super interesting. For example, we have it. Chone is a kind of derivate in terms of conjure addition. That's not really useful. I mean, these two are down the line, right, in terms of the thematic lines they belong to, in the Tselpa line. But yeah, not on okay. Beijing, all right, that's probably, you know, a later edition anyways. But here, Boryat manuscript with missing sections. And so this, you see, or Mongolian edition. So that's the things I would go and look at to see if there is any value, right? The rest is documented in the Vienna University database. So, but you see, it can do that, and it can do that quite quickly for 49 sutras, and then producing a list. So again, working with long documents, you see how with a good prompt you can save time, have fairly accurate results, I think, and get a sense of whether, you know, you want to engage more with the materials or not. So the ground you can cover with these tools, because that's really what we're talking about at this stage of our translation or pre-translation work, is quite amazing. You know, it's like in terms of learning, in terms of exploring resources, determining what you want to work with, not. For example, here we have as well a ton now of information online. So here I'm using NotebookLM to do something that's really cool. It's, you know, the sources here I can add. I added not PDFs, not you know, any static materials like this, but websites, online information, and I basically used the Buddha Nature, etc. Buddha Nature website, and I asked, okay, you know, I'm going to work on Buddha Nature, so that's my new project. Maybe I have a text on Buddha Nature I have to translate. And, you know, so here I give some kind of information just to make it more specific, you know. So make a list of useful resources from this website, check if there is useful secondary literature I could use or any wiki page of interest. I mean, you know. And so it goes through the whole website and tells me what the structure of the website is, what could be helpful. You know, for example, it says, that's quite true, you know, you might find the country resources section of the library particularly helpful. So you see, it's really good to explore something, quickly get a sense. You know, you could add study Buddhism here, links, you know. So you could have a bunch. You could have 10, say, links to different, like, say, Gelugpa materials. You know, you want to have an overview. What's the Gakcha in, you know, in say Tsongkhapa's text and in the Gelug tradition in general. And then start crying on that to see if you want to go there or not, if you think it's going to be something interesting for you. So anyways, you see I'm going with a general question and about Tathagata Karma, and their answer is going to be based on the website information here, which is another thing that is really good, because doing this, you can get a sense of what you will find there, and you can separate the sources one from another. So here's what I was telling you earlier. We have a project on bodhicitta transcription. We ask Perplexity, for example, to identify, you know, useful resources, online resources, PDFs that are in free access. We want to build up our documentation so that we can, you know, work on that. And look, the work is really good. So I mean, the prompt is about like papers, dissertations, and monographs, and I'm getting good stuff. I mean, I was testing a bit to see if Dorji Wanchuk will be there, because he had this massive dissertation or PhD dissertation on the topic. And sure enough, so I was like, check academia.edu. You can specify domains as well. You would like, you know, the tool to look at. And look at that. Key monographs. Dorji Wanchuk, like PhD dissertations here, and published a book. I mean, published a book too. And so you see, it's quite amazing because it tells me key monographs, not just monographs, or, you know, but it says that's a key resource, meaning in that case it's very accurate and it's giving good feedback. It could be more comprehensive. We can keep prompting to get more, you know. Again, it's not like querying a database, right? It's not like, oh yeah, that's something very important. I should say it's not like we, you know, we use the database, we query, and then we get the result, and that's the end of it. because it's linear, but here it's not. So you have to keep prompting. You have to suggest ideas. You have to, did you look at that? You think about this. Actually, I'm interested in bodhicitta in the context, say, of Dzogchen, not really, which is a totally different thing, right? And not just the Mahayana, say, world. So you keep prompting, and that's active prompting. And that's something really, I think when we have these conversations about working with LLM, sometimes people would say, I prompted and I got this gibberish, answer that is worth nothing. But to be honest, I think is not the way we should think of these tools, because it's not like, again, we ask a question and we get a result and it's finished. No, it's an exploration process. And if you do that, I think with most tools we have today, we'll achieve, a lot more in a shorter amount of time in a way. So that's something in terms of how to use these things I want to talk about.
Greg, I just want to jump in. It's
Sure.
10:30 now, so we've been going an hour and a half. So I just want to check in.
Sure.
Probably shouldn't go too much beyond that. But
Yeah.
there's questions and things. Do you want
Please.
to
Yeah.
wrap up this, or?
We can do questions now, and yeah, totally. It's good. We can do that.
Okay. So
Can I do a last one, Marcus? Sorry, while you check the questions, I'm doing this one because with this one we're gonna move into something else. So maybe it's good if we stop there actually for today. I just wanted to show you another really amazing tool, and I'm done with this kind of documentation building phase, But this one is really amazing. And with NotebookLM, what you can do too is summarize YouTube videos. So here is a lecture given at Sarah by Sarah Harding about Che and her findings, in the arising of the Che tradition. We did that recently, so that was an amazing talk. And when you look at, and I will try to post this somewhere too on the Discord channel, but when you look at that, it's really amazing because all the points Sarah was making about how the Che tradition, came to be historically, have been very well identified by the model in this summary. And it's really giving you a wonderful overview, and then you can keep prompting. So like here, you see, I'm just asking for an overview first. So all the main sections of the talks are really there. And then we go with give me a detailed overview of the philosophical underpinnings of Che according to Harding. And the model goes with okay, understanding emptiness and compassion, Che and Che's charya as Che, right, as conduct, which was a big point that Sarah made in her talk. A big thing that the term itself may have been related to conduct, so in a way, and so originally, and I was really impressed, I must say, by the quality of NotebookLM summaries of YouTube videos. I think it's an almost 2-hour video, we're talking about here, and you can keep prompting. So here I'm asking, for the historical development of this tradition. And it goes really okay, perfection of wisdom in action, which was a big point that Sarah made that day in that talk. And then talk about, the conduct thing, shifting emphasis and everything. So really, very impressive. I think we can stop there now for the, project documentation stuff.
All right, great. It's really a lot of great examples showing the power of these things. So there's a bunch of different questions. Some of them relate to the different AI models and options out there. So I'm just going to answer all of those with a link. There's a comparison website of AI models, so you can check it out. I'm sending that to everyone in the chat. artificialanalysis.ai/models gives you extremely detailed analysis of all the different models. So you can check that out. Let's see. Sarah is asking, are these answers a link you can click to get to the result? or do you need to take the information and find the document yourself? In the ChatGPT example, let's say you wanted to look at the Mongolian edition. How do you do that?
Yeah. So these, for example, we're here on the ChatGPT thing. Let's see if the catalog is still loaded, because maybe we can do that even now. So what you do then, okay, this one. So, you know, what you would do is you would say, okay, I'm really doing that, you know, like, let's see if it works. I'm giving a bit of structure here. So you would ask, provide more information about the Mongolian edition. And then, of course, you have the page number, so you can take the PDF and go there. But let's see if we don't do that, what happens. I don't know if it's still there in the knowledge base. It's going to be, the question is going to be, okay. So here we have nothing here, but you see, that's how it would work. Essentially, it's that, you know, what you would do is keep questioning, and on the basis of what you're interested in and really what's in the PDF. It would not link you necessarily to more data, right? And it will just, like, at that stage, work on that, you know, on this information here. What I would do though in this case really is I would go and check page 145, right, of this particular sutra here. If, say, this is what I'm interested in, I would go there. And the other question I have here, I don't know, because this PDF I loaded quite a while ago, probably 2 or 3 months ago. And so I don't know if it's still in the model now, but I can check that and maybe show you next time, you know, if you can get more information. We could use as well another LLM and see what comes out of it.
Great. There's another question about saying experience with Claude, asking for written sources that it fabricates text titles. How are you avoiding that?
Yeah, you have hallucinations sometimes in every single model. And you see the prompt I put to in one of the projects, I asked the model to check, to be nadir and check results and all these things. So there are system prompts they call them, that are going to be systematically applied to all conversations. And at that level, you can add something. You can, in the prompt as well, ask to verify things, you know, at the end, so verify your results. And another strategy is, once you have the results and you know you had a problem with that particular task in the past, or if you suspect there may be a problem there, or if you need to have very accurate results, then you will, you know, process the output with a new prompt. You will cast the model into a new role and say, I do that very often. So you're, say, a Tibetan Buddhist studies publisher and reviewer, you know, review the work of your colleague who identified these titles in this, you know, PDF or in this, like, database or whatever, you know, the data set is. Be critical and make sure results are accurate, for example. And if there are hallucinations, this will very often, funny enough, and hallucination is a weird thing, you know, with LLMs, because how come the same model cast in different roles going to find them? So usually this works to find a lot of stuff that's not there. And yeah, and then, you know, that's the thing. It's if you need to have something that is not a matter of exploration, but determination, if you want to have a more deterministic outcome to a process, you have to go, and this is what we will see next time, with an algorithmic system approach, which is based on a procedure and that is extremely linear. And for example, for any corpus-related tasks that need that, I would not recommend using LLMs, but corpus linguistic tools, Python scripts, you know, to extract titles, for example, or, you know, semantic mapping to get a sense of, like, how terms relate to one another. I would trust that. I would do that first, and then I would use the LLM to discuss results, because that would be very easy for me to check things too. In that case, that would simplify my life a lot. So what we have to see, I think, with these things is, if we want to explore things, it's amazing. If we want to be 100% correct about something, we have to find another strategy, or we have to use them, together with other tools. And I think we have to be really honest, about that. And you see with AI these days, we have a lot of issues like that, like Waymo, right? I mean, car driving. And if you can't tolerate a single error, I read somewhere recently that a lot of like AI car companies are putting out, because you're not sure you're gonna have a zero, accident like environment with this solution. So they're freaking out, because there are environments where you can't tolerate to be vaguely right. I mean, and so or to be right, say 98% of the time, you have to clock. And so this is what we have to think about here as humans. We're in charge, and there are areas where we need to be 100% accurate, to make bold claims, or to understand something really, or to produce information that's reliable. But there are other areas where we don't, and so we need to exercise our sense of judgment, right?
There's another question about work automatically extracting Karchak from Tibetan texts using these tools, which I think you've shown before.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes. But
yes, we can do that.
About that.
Yeah, we can totally do that. I think, well, for example, this is one of them. So we have two catalogs here. I mean, two tags, sorry, from a data set, but they're really, so that, wait, the example I think we had was with the catalog. So that's next time, I think, this one. But yeah, we have this one. I mean, that's a catalog, and that's a Karchak in a way. That's a like academic one, but that would be the same principle. Is you have your catalog list of text in in the format that the LLM can connect to, so PDF or a data set like a text file, or anything really, or a copy and paste from a website page as well, would work really well. And so, it would just interrogate.
I think he means the other way around, like providing a text, a big, long, complex text, and saying, give me a Karchak.
Sure.
Yeah.
So give me a Karchak or a subject of the text.
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah.
So you can totally do that. I gave, I think, last time an example of this. So about, I think there was this one.
And you can tell it to give it to you in Tibetan or in English.
Yeah.
Too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You can give it. So wait, I have at some point I asked for a subject. But yeah, I mean, you can do that. So here it's in English, but you can totally specify you want subject in Tibetan, or it works very well. Here, I think, so somewhere here, and then, or is it this one? No, that's gonna be, I think.
So you've used Google AI Studio for that.
Yeah, for this one with a very low temperature. So I would set the temperature at 0.2 or 0.25. The temperature, remember, there's this thing that will allow the model to be more creative, and we don't want that necessarily. So, so here you see, so it's giving me a kind of like subject structure with English, but you can ask without English. And so, yeah, you see. So anyways, yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they're quite good at that, I think. That's the kind of stuff where LLM can be used to produce a subject. If you want to produce a Tibetan publication of a text, but there's no subject, you can even, prompt in a way to, either be more specific about some sections of the text, or if you want the subject to follow a certain interpretation of a certain tradition too, you could do that.
Mm-hmm. Great. All right. All right, we're coming up. Pretty soon we're going to be 2 hours again. So Elizabeth is asking, will you be showing us how to create comparative editions step by step, starting with creating digital versions? Or is today's presentation all you'll be showing on this? Thanks.
Yeah, so on this time, I think, you know, we're going to just do that. But I mean, these things will be online, and I hope the conversation can continue. Fundamentally, the process is not going to be very different from what I showed here, right? And you see, I mean, this is what you get on short segments. So if you have, say, 2 or 3 texts, 4 texts, if it's a maybe dominant the text and you have, say, 6, 7, 8 editions, you know, if you sample key, so the procedure would be to sample key passages to get a sense of, at least, of their, you know, thematic relationship, all these like witnesses, then they can be aligned and you will have that. I will recommend doing this instead of producing a critical edition of all, you know, text. It's okay if the texts are short, but that will be still some work. What would be, I think, interesting though, is to have a sense of clusters, and then within clusters of witnesses, selecting 1 or 2 representative, you know, witnesses, so that you deal only, you cut the 8 to 3 or 4, you know what I'm saying? And then you work with that, and that you can do your critical edition. And in that case, that's pretty much what we showed here, right? So what would happen is that you would have your Tibetan segments, right? And the model would produce that kind of thing here. Then after that, there should be, of course, kind of manual human supervision and verification of you know, the alignment. So that would be the methodology I would think would work probably quite well. It's faster if the text is short. And now, if you want to do that on a grand scale, you're going to have to use the API, meaning you're going to have to use a Python script that would split your 8 text, or say you have 3 texts you want to align, right? So what I would do is have them split into chunks by a Python script, right? Question the API every time through the API. So the API is a way to connect to the model, but using, you know, within a kind of like a coding system. So the code would go through the chunks 1 by 1, and automatically connect to the model online and ask the model essentially to do this for each chunk. And then at the end, the script would put back the output together, you know what I'm saying, in one block. So that would be the kind of way to produce the beginning of a critical edition. And that would be a great experiment. You know, we haven't done that yet. So this is just illustrative, and this is done by the model. It's not me, you know, I haven't done anything here. So just to be clear, I'm just prompting, you know, here, and you see this is called an artifact on Claude. It's an output that is put in its own window by Claude, and the output is here. You see, that's this. So I can remove it, then I can show it here. So that's my prompt. You see, you're a philologist specialized in Tibetan Buddhist studies. You'll produce a critical edition of following witnesses. So I'm just doing that. And now on that basis, you know, have this. And so there are notes, and there's a lot of information, but essentially, you know, it's showing as well archaic spelling. You see, for example, here, the yata and all these things, Dajak as well. Everything would be indicated. Like we have here some witnesses that are from Western Tibet, and more archaic in nature and spelling, and that would be indicated by the model usually too. But so that's, you know, that's what the model did. That's the beginning of something. It's showing us that with better prompt, or with another model that would be fine-tuned, we can probably get to the point fairly quickly where a lot of the philological work will be done, you know. And we'll have to supervise and check, but I mean, you see, that's the model. I didn't do that. So you see here on note 11, we have here a space, for example, others we don't. I mean, everything is like, yeah.
Okay, there's another question about that's more general about translation. So when you're doing this work, we've mostly been looking at Tibetan and English. If you were going to translate into Spanish, is it better to work with English, ask it to translate into Spanish, or can you go directly from Tibetan or Sanskrit into Spanish?
It's a very good question. I haven't experimented on that. And, you know, if you do experiment, whoever asked the question, thank you for that. And please keep in touch and send me your results because I would be interested.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the kind of things where we have to fool around a bit with the model and see what comes out, you know. There's a really breakdown.
Yeah. While you were talking, I asked Claude. So I asked Claude that question, and it answered that it's easier to do English to Spanish than Tibetan to Spanish.
Yeah, it will
It has
depend.
more extensive training data.
Exactly, and that's what I was about to say. It will depend on the training data of the model, but you know, that's a crazy field. And just so you know, there was a model years ago, I mean, maybe a year and a half or something, not so long, but the model was completely fluent in Persian, in the Persian language. And no one could understand why. And you know, the training data, there were a lot of different languages the model was exposed to.
Yeah.
And its Persian was perfect. And not other languages. And no one knew. So that's an area where it's a bit of a black box, and to be fair, and I don't know, we have to test things and see, because as you were saying, Marcus, that's exactly right. The training data and the way too, during the training phase, the model will react to the data. It doesn't seem to be linear too, you know. So my understanding, and maybe I'm wrong, I'm not an expert at that, but my understanding is, from what I read, is there's the training data thing, but there's what the model, you know, during the training phase will do, and that's like it. I think a big black box in a way. Like Claude too, right? Claude is amazing at Tibetan, and I don't know. I mean, I don't think anyone wanted Claude to be, you know, the king of Tibetan stuff in a way. Yeah. And how that happened? Okay, he had probably access to a lot of training data, but you know, in my understanding is that Claude is a weird model, you know, because it's not as good as others for a lot of things actually, and for us, it's one of the most useful ones. And I don't know, sometimes I'm asking things and that are not directly about Tibetan text, and I almost feel like there's a drop in Claude's level, you know, and so yeah, it's very very weird.
Yeah, interesting. All right, great. Well, we've been going for almost 2 hours now, so we better pause. And maybe we can, we'll plan to do this same time next week.
Yeah.
Maybe try to keep it to an hour, hour and a half.
Yeah, we can be shorter next time. Next time we'll do the 4 noble prompt.
Yes, that sounds great.
Or complex prompt.
Yeah. Great. And you're gonna eventually send out the Discord channel so we can have more questions and discussion there.
Yeah.
That will help a lot. And we were going to make a web page at some point where we can put all these resources, all the videos, all of that in one place. So eventually we'll get that running. This is not all we're doing. Everybody's busy with all their other projects, so be patient. We'll get to it eventually. Maybe we'll ask Claude to do it.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, thanks very much. And next week, same time, same back channel. Thanks.